I love sim racing on my big screen TV. It is huge, it has an immense sense of scale. But in my video showing the TV, some of you have written in the comments, if you have VR or triple screen, you'll have a much better sense of awareness. And that is totally right. It's something that you really cannot fix with just a single screen. And this is where today's video sponsor, Tobii, said, "We got you, fam." Tobii sent this to me saying, you have to try this in Assetto Corsa Competizione. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna try that not just only in Assetto Corsa Competizione, but also in iRacing, which is the other sim I'm driving the most at the moment. However, sim racing is not only the only place where the Tobii Eye Tracker 5 is able to be used. You can also use this in flight sims like Microsoft Flight Simulator or DCS, but also on space sims like Elite Dangerous, and also even on Arma. But for this video, we're gonna try this in sim racing titles. But now it's the interesting part, how to install the Tobii Eye Tracker 5 and what to look for. In order to have the Tobii Eye Tracker 5 work with everything, and that includes the eye tracking and also the motion tracking, there are a few requirements that you need to have in mind. One of them is the positioning of the eye tracker. In Tobii setup, they have an image of a desk setup, but that desk setup isn't really feasible for most of the people, even though there are a lot of people that still drive on the desk. For myself, I have probably one of the largest wheelbases at the moment installed in my sim rig, the Logitech Pro, and also a huge TV in front of me, so a few things need to be taken in consideration. Optimally, for the setup to work, it is recommended that to use the eye tracker on the chin of the monitor or also on a stock of the monitor. But in sim racing, I am using a TV stand or a monitor stand, and the monitor is below the deck of the wheelbase. So we have to do a few adjustments for that. And in my case, what I'm doing, because I'm using such a different sim rig from everybody else, is to install the eye tracker using a couple of clamps and connect it to one of my side uprights. There is also a recommendation of distance, and you have to keep that in mind as well while you're doing the installation. I would recommend somewhere around 60 to 70 or 80 centimeters from your face, so you can get your face within the cone of operation. As per specifications, if you want to have the eye tracking, you really need to have the eye tracker below your face. However, I'm going to show you something really cool later on. Once you install Tobii Experience, I would recommend you that you set up the display and improve your calibration if you want to have the eye tracking as well. Setting up the display will give you more or less the area of use, and depending where you use the tracker, in my case, for eye tracking, I need to use the tracker on one side and one of the uprights. Therefore, I need to get the setup display to have the tracker set up to the left side. Therefore, the eye tracker is able to get my tracking on. And once you improve the calibration, it shouldn't be an issue. I do recommend that you set up, especially if you're using a steering wheel, you set up the eye tracker a little bit further on the back, like I'm showing you now. In this case, it will help out to have your head inside of the cone of the infrared. Let's set up then the OpenTrack after you install it. On the inputs, there's two ways to use it: the UDP over network or the Tobii Eye Tracker. If you are having issues with the UDP over network, even with port 4242 or 4747 or 5555 or something like that, move to the Tobii one, because in my case, that was basically plug and play. For the output, use the free track 2.0 enhanced. And for the filter, even though that Tobii requires this one or recommends this one, my recommendation, at least I found in my use, is that you use natural movement. On a natural movement, I'm leaving it like this and getting the rotation at 6. The more the rotation, the faster it is going to be your movement. Less rotation, it's going to be a little bit more on laggy side. So depending on what you want or what you need and what your brain is thinking, just make it faster or slower according to your needs. Now, other parts of it will also be on the options. What you want to do is center at startup. They have a bunch of centering modes. You have disabled, still works, but I think the point one is a little more practical and actually more accurate when you are doing the centering mode and when you activate this. And also on the filter, it will go back to what you're using on the filter. The other part is the mapping. The mapping is important in this case, depending on the game, and also depending if you're using UDP or Tobii. On the Tobii, it's better to use 90 degrees maximum inputs, and I found that on the UDP, it's better to use 180. But generally, what I want to do is to have something a little linear or something a little bit smoother. You can add a little bit of a smoothness, for example, at the center. If you find the center is moving too fast, which is generally my case, you can add a little bit of smoothing, and then you have a line that is more of an exponential, and it will be incredibly smooth to move left and right. Now, this is going to be totally personal, but for myself, when we go to the options and you go to the output, I am going to disable the roll, the X, the Y, and the Z. I don't want the roll at all. I don't want to have movement on my seat. So I don't want to the tracking, and the tracking is incredibly powerful to track all of your movements. I just want you the tracker to track my head. In this case, you just use yaw and pitch. And if you want to move left and right, and you want that, it works a little bit almost like VR. You can almost go out of the car as long as you'll be inside of the cone of the Tobii, and it's quite fun. But for me, you know, the Y and the Z, the yaw and the pitch will be more than enough, and that's really what I want. And then we'll have a very simple way to move your head, and it will be more than enough. We're at the roller coaster of Nordschleife at the Seto Corsa Competizione to show you how interesting it is to use this Tobii eye tracker. Tobii eye tracker has basically two very good features on its feature set that are useful for sim racing. The first one will be the Tobii eye tracking, or the eye tracking, and that's the bubble that you see here, where I'm looking at, so I can look at the apex, at the exit of the corner, and all of that. It essentially follows your eyes and tells you what you are looking at, or tells your viewership what you're doing. And the second part is something really powerful for sim racing, which is the head tracking. And the head tracking in the Tobii i5 is really, really good. It's very much the best eye tracking that I've used. Now, let's start with the Tobii Ghost, with that little bubble that you see jumping around left and right. So it will tell you what I am looking at. So I'm looking at the apex, and then a little bit more on the exit. And this has two practical uses, for at least for most people. The first one will be, of course, streaming. It's a big thing, a big feature. The integration on Twitch, that will tell you your viewership. What's your thought process? And from yourself, from your site, you can turn it on or turn it off. If you have a stream deck, so I turned it off, you don't see it, turned it on, can change colors, can revert the color back, and everything works very nicely. And in the side of the viewership, they'll be thinking, oh, okay, that's cool. What is he looking at? What's his thought process? Is he looking at the car? Is he looking at the apex? Is he looking at the exit? So this is also a way for the viewership to learn a little bit about the thought process of the streamer, especially if it's a fast streamer. And, you know, subtle hints will tell you how to improve as well. And speaking of that, that could also be a very good way to integrate with your training, especially if you use a coach and you're doing your sim racing journey. One very important thing about learning how to race, it's not often talked about, you see it here and there, but not very often talked about, is where to look. And of course, it's important to look at the apexes, and the Tobii Ghost will show you that, but it's also important to plan ahead. And they often tell you that you should look always ahead when you're racing. It's not just on the corner, but also at the exit, to know where you need to put the car to prepare exactly for the next few steps. And if you look ahead, you will have essentially always a better line. And if you're looking at with the coach, you're working with the coach, the Ghost could be something really good to show, because the coach will tell you, hey, you're looking at the wrong place, you're doing it wrong because you're not preparing your exits, and all of that. So the Ghost could be something good for your training. Now, the other part, very important to me, very, very important to me, because I am a single screen user. I know it's a TV and it's huge and all of that. I love the immersion. However, you know, if I can extend a little bit more of my single screen monitor or single screen TV, I'm gonna have that. Thank you very much. And the Tobii is basically next level. The integration is so seamless. You don't really think there is a tracker there doing all of that. So I look, and this naturally moves a little bit. Of course, it will depend on the mappings, it will depend on the sensitivity. If you want to start with this, look at my settings first and then move ahead and try to change a little bit if you don't like the accelerations, or if you find it's not linear enough. And when you get your settings done the way you want it, this is absolutely something else. Very, very good, very immersive, and it doesn't really get in the way once you get this set up. You know, it moves a little bit, and if you want to look, you know, okay, I have a car in the side. Can I see it? Yes, you can. Can I see that? Yes, I can. And it's so fast, so responsive. It doesn't really lag, and you can even make it more responsive than this, or you can make it less if you feel that is, you know, a little bit too much information. You can change it how you want. And with everything together and the way you can approach the use of the Tobii Eye Tracker 5, this for me is an absolute game changer to my experience. Here's a more extreme use case of the Tobii Eye Tracker 5. What about you're not a streamer, you don't have any lights, or you don't want lights at all and you like driving in the dark? What about it? Will it work? Well, in this case, as you can see, we have the TV in front of us. The TV is, you know, showing me the images. Yeah, in the background we have a couple of lights, but in reality we don't have a very light up scene, as you can see probably from the webcam. And, you know, the head tracking works as good as it did before. The eye tracking works in the same way. And that means the Tobii Eye Tracker 5 works really well in dark conditions because, you know, it's an eye tracker that uses infrared, and in this case it brings a lot of advantages. Of course, you need to be taking care of your light positions. If you do use lights, it can't be showing any bright lights on top of the Tobii, otherwise it's not gonna do any acquisition. Or if you use eyeglasses, you need to be a little bit careful as well to keep the lens cleaned, because, you know, sometimes if you have smudges, it will be very difficult for the Tobii go through the lenses. But as long as you keep your eyewear clean, it should be more than enough. I'm closer now. We're gonna do this TikTok style. What does it mean out of recommendation or out of spec? Well, if I want the Tobii Eye Tracker to work, or at least the eye tracking, I need it to have close within 95 centimeters, and it needs to be in a specific situation and a specific height. That's why I was using it on the upright. But if I don't need the eye tracking, or you don't need the eye tracking, you can do something really, really cool and move it out of the way. And this could be important for those of you who are doing Formula 1 and you have those weird sim rigs. So if you look over there at the top, there's the Tobii. And what does it mean? Well, it means now if I want to play just with the head tracking, as you can see, we can do it. The Tobii is out of the way. And best of all, you don't lose any definition on the head tracking, and you can probably even use it further away than 95 centimeters. And this brings up one of the biggest things about the Tobii, is that it has a lot of versatility. If you don't need to use the Tobii eye tracker part of it, the movement tracker is incredibly precise, even over 95 centimeters over the recommended. In this case, I believe I'm around 1 meter away, so just 5 centimeters away from recommended, and it still works. So what about other games? We're now using Assetto Corsa, and with Assetto Corsa, it is basically automatically OpenTrack, and it works. In this case, I'm just using the head motion because the motion sensor is on the top, and, you know, this is much better in my opinion than neck effects, because neck effects will start looking automatically, and it's really not just about the way you look at the corner. So it becomes incredibly dynamic and a wonderful way to do a little bit of toge. And in iRacing, it's exactly the same thing. You basically just need to activate OpenTracker, or just leave it at startup, and essentially go into iRacing without changing any setting. Everything will be automatically correct. Every setting that they've used in other games, it will work exactly the same. So the head tracking and the torso tracking of the Tobii Eye Tracker is incredibly powerful, and as I've demonstrated, it even works in the dark. So you have a tremendously powerful tool. The Tobii Eye Tracker 5 ends up being a really interesting tool for sim racing. It is very small, and even on this small package, it is incredibly powerful. And let us know what you think of this.